Every manufacturer has a catalog of coasters, some small, some enormous, but they all have a wide range of shapes and sizes. Last week, we looked at 15 manufacturers, including Aero, B&M, GCI, Gravity Group, Mach, Intamin, and a bunch of others. Now, let's pick up the mantle and finish this off. This is the second part of a two-part series looking at every manufacturer's biggest and smallest coaster. Let's start with Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC. They started in 2001 and built their first coaster in 2011, 27 total, and the race for the biggest RMC is razor close. Zadra at Energylandia is 206 feet tall, so is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa, but that first drop goes all the way to the ground, the full 206 feet, barely edging Zadra. No surprise, these are also the best paced RMCs, but Zadra has the edge there. As for the smallest, they just got in the business of making small coasters. Up to this point, Medusa's steel coaster was the smallest at 98 feet. Now, it's Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City. This is opening in 2024 and is completely different than anything else RMC has ever done. This will be mostly powered except for some dips at the end, and it is going to be taller than the original, but still won't be any bigger than 50 feet. Premier Rides is all about the launch coasters, opening 39 since 1996, and they have a few that clear the 200-foot mark. One of them was the Chiller at Great Adventure. That's gone now. You also have the Mr. Freeze clones at Six Flags Over Texas in St. Louis. Those are very much alive, and that spike is 218 feet. But it's another coaster with a vertical spike that earned the right to call itself the biggest premiere. And unfortunately, like the Chiller, it's also long gone. This is Speed the Ride at NASCAR Cafe, located inside the Sahara Hotel. This launched out of the hotel, into a loop, wrapped around the front, and up the 224-foot spike. Does it make it all the way to the top? No, and based on where you sit, your height will vary. Still, this is the tallest. For the smallest, Premier is working on a spinning Wild Mouse coaster. This is going to Steel Pier, but I don't know how tall that's going to be. The one they just took out stood 42.7 feet, so if this new one's the same, this will be the smallest. That would be just a couple feet shorter than Revenge of the Mummy, the enclosed coaster at Universal Studios Florida, Hollywood, and Singapore. That rises up 44.4 feet, very limited being inside. Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters, or PTC, built some of the world's earliest wooden coasters. Its active coaster building days being between 1904 and 1976, 127 total. Their biggest coaster also happens to be their last coaster, Screaming Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis. This is 110 feet tall, a 92-foot drop, almost 3,900 feet of track, running along the hillside, and as of 2023, beating me senseless. PTC built their share of family coasters also. Little Dipper at Six Flags Great America, only 28 feet tall, but 1 foot shorter is Roller Coaster at Idlewild. This is the only coaster I've seen that weighs you before you ride, trying to make sure the train stays within its limits, and it covers 900 feet of track and stands 27 feet tall. The Din Corporation lasted 10 years between 1983 and 1992, and fitting enough, they built 10 wooden coasters. They took part in a crazy wooden coaster war in the early 90s, and one of those record setters was Mean Streak at Cedar Point. 161 feet tall, 155-foot drop, over a mile of track. This monstrosity being so big, the workers went on record saying they thought the project would never end. They didn't try to smash records all the time. One of their first projects was Raging Wolf Bobs at Geauga Lake, half the size of Mean Streak at 80 feet, and this served 20 good seasons before the park closed down for good. The Roller Coaster Corporation of America, or RCCA, has quite the reputation. They have 6 coasters to their name, the biggest one being quite obvious, the 218-foot Son of Beast at Kings Island. It started with a 214-foot drop, and at 7,032 feet, it's the second longest wooden coaster ever built. This thing was a mess from day one, but it left Kings Island with one heck of a story. The only coaster under 100 feet is Bandit at Movie Park Germany, 91.2 feet tall, 81.7 foot drop, 3,600 feet of track, and the smaller size didn't seem to help it with the ride experience. This is often cited as the world's worst wooden coaster. I wouldn't know, but I'll take their word for it. S&S started in 1994, making drop towers that use compressed air, and in 2001, they turned it on its side and started making coasters, 42 total, and their biggest coaster is also their most insane, Aijunaika at Fuji Q Highland. This would be a massive hypercoaster at 249.3 feet, but when you consider you're flipping face first on the side of the track, there's no wonder this is a lot of people's #1 coaster. S&S makes all kinds of coasters: launch, wooden, free spin, beyond vertical, and also family inverts. Their smallest is Merlin's Mayhem at Dutch Wonderland, standing 60 feet tall and winding around 1,300 feet of track. This opened in 2018, and they've never made another one of these. They're also opening the first access coaster next year, Transformers in Saudi Arabia, and I would be surprised if that tops 60 feet. I bet, come 2025, this will take over as the smallest SNS. Pinfari was legendary for their portable fair-style coasters, 198 total, but a bunch of them constantly on the move. Their biggest coaster is their RC70 model, standing 78.8 feet tall. Gotham at a park I can't pronounce in France, and Hurricane at Centro Norte in Argentina. Unlike most Pinfaris, this has inversions, 2 loops and a corkscrew wrapping around itself on a compact plot. When it comes to the smallest Pinfari, it's gotta be the Circus Clown model. There are 6 of these, most of them being in the UK, 3 still in operation, and this just goes around in a circle and rises maybe 6 or 7 feet off the ground. The SBF Visa Group started in 1952, but they've risen to prominence with their spinning coasters. That helped bring their coaster total up to 405. By far, their biggest coaster is the one once known as Cool and Fresh. This was on the fair circuit starting in 2003, got moved to Wonderland Eurasia but never opened, and then was moved to Dippy-Do Park in the Netherlands but was never built. It rose up a vertical lift at 75.5 feet, took a beyond vertical drop down the same tower, went into a loop, and the ride ended. Super janky, but I would totally ride it. As for the smallest coaster, you may think it's the one that translates to the very smallest. After all, Der Allerminst, or Teeny Weeny at Tussenfrid, once bragged it was the world's smallest coaster, but that's no longer the case. That title has to go to Circus Coaster at Energylandia. This is literally about 3 feet tall, and it's hard to believe anyone actually ordered a model this basic. It's an oval, but with a small twist from the start, a tiny dip on the straightaway. This has to be the smallest coaster in the world. It's the new Teeny Weeny as far as I'm concerned. Schwarzkopf paved the way for so many other manufacturers, starting in 1945 and lasting until the 80s. 146 coasters were built, none taller than the legendary Montezuma's Revenge. As it goes with any shuttle coaster, you don't hit the top and everyone on the train gets a different height, but this is listed at 148 feet, so it wins. If you don't like that, you can look at the now defunct Mindbender at Galaxyland. This was an indoor coaster that stood 145 feet tall, just 3 feet behind, and it had a 127-foot drop. Schwarzkopf built a big catalog by building coasters that were very portable and very cloned. And their smallest coaster is their Alpenblitz model, 9 of them total, 16.4 feet tall. There was one at Great Adventure, one at Phantasialand, and the only one left is at Queensland in India. Skyline does a lot of work with GCI, but when it comes to their own coasters, they're lucky the Kid Flashes opened late last year, or else they'd have no operating coasters. They've opened 5 since 2018, their tallest by far being Harley Quinn Crazy Coaster. Those 2 big Emmelmans standing 62 feet tall, the train going through them over and over and over again. The smallest coaster just closed earlier this year, Brava at Mass Mocha, a museum in Massachusetts. This was an ode to the backyard coaster, and despite it being in a museum, you could actually ride it. No shock, this was only 12 feet tall. The Kid Flash coasters are twice that tall, so if you got to this museum in Massachusetts and rode this thing, congrats, you have one of the most unique credits ever built. Togo is a Japanese company that started in 1935, and they've built 72 coasters, mostly in Japan. By far the biggest is also arguably their best, Fujiyama at Fuji-Q Highland, once the world's tallest coaster. It stands 259.2 feet, 229.7 foot drop, over 6,700 feet of track. This is a behemoth. The other end of this is pretty extreme, the Kitty Shuttle model. One was in Japan, the other is still open in France. I don't know how tall this is exactly, but you go up one spike in a catch car, and then drop down and just rock back and forth. Some coasters are engineering marvels, and some of them are this. Foma has been in business since 1926, opening their first coaster in 1979, and they mass-produce clone coasters, big and small, that got them up to 419 worldwide. 2 of that 419 topped the 200-foot mark, one being the new tilt coaster going to Six Flags Qiddiya called Iron Rattler. That's 208 feet. But they also have a shuttle coaster called Big Air at Ida Theme Park in Taiwan. This is a giant half-pipe, having 2 spinning cars that apparently no longer spin. Those spikes are 209.3 feet tall, and although the trains don't reach the top and not everyone hits the peak, this is still technically the tallest Foma. The shortest one is harder to pinpoint, but I think it's the 85-meter junior coaster. This has 2 installations, Mini Mine Train at a park in Taiwan and Streamliner Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. These look maybe 15 or 20 feet tall. They have a simple oval layout, only 279 feet of track, And with 419 coasters, I'm surprised there's only 2 of these. Vegan has made their name making alpine coasters, and if you know these, they're built on the side of a hill and wind their way down. These have become insanely popular, and 328 have been built going back to 1997. Because of the terrain nature of these alpine coasters, I didn't look at height, I looked at length. Their biggest project by a mile, literally, is Tobotronic at Natureland in Andorra. This has 17,338.5 feet of track. Its uphill length just over a mile at 5,577 feet, and the downhill section is more than double that, 11,811 feet. That's 5,823 feet longer than the next longest coaster, Alpine Coaster in Austria. So like I said, it beat it by a mile. The smallest vegan I could find is Hexenbesen, a mystical hex coaster in Germany where riders hang under the track and lay down in a tube. You don't even have a ride-off. You just climb the stairs, lay down in the tube, no restraints. You push the start button when you're ready, and off you go. This hangs off a single rail with sharp turns so the car can swing out, and this almost looks like a backyard coaster. It's only 360.9 feet long. Zamperla is an Italian company that started in 1966, and they've built 390 coasters worldwide, most of them on the smaller side. However, they have their famous Thunderbolt model, 7 of them worldwide, but the 675-meter version is their biggest. There's only one of these, Thunder Chariot at Discoveryland in China, 2 feet taller than the original Thunderbolt, 116.8 feet. This has a vertical lift and vertical drop, 4 inversions, and over 2,200 feet of track. The smallest has to be their Minnie Mouse coasters, 14 of them around the world, and it is what it sounds like. It's a small wild mouse, but you're in a longer train, going into hairpin turn after hairpin turn, and if I had to guess, I would say this is maybe 6 or 8 feet tall. It can't be more than that. Zera is a German company that started in 1930, their first of 197 coasters coming in 1972, and I just got to ride their biggest coaster, and it's a good one, Liesbergbahnen at Liesberg. At 147.7 feet, it beats Wicked at Lagoon by almost 38 feet, and on top of that, it's almost 4,400 feet long, 1,600 feet longer than Verbolten in second place. This is a giant roided up mine train, swooping along the Liesberg hillside, such a unique and fun ride, offering good speed and force. The smallest is kinda mysterious, the Wonderful World of Whimsy at Hong Kong Island. This was one of their Tivoli kiddie coasters, operated from 1987 to God knows when, and it only stood 6 feet tall. By comparison, their small Tivoli models are 10.8 feet tall, so those dwarf the Wonderful World of Whimsy. There are 18 of these out there. Last one, Enf Miler. They've been in business since 1992, building 58 coasters, most of them made for kids, but one towers above the rest, Prairie Screamer at Prairie Playland. This used to be the Screamer at Scandia, Ontario, finding a new home in 2022, 90 feet tall, 80-foot drop, located in this flea market in Grand Prairie, Texas. As far as I can tell, their smallest kids coaster is their oval model. There are 7 of these out there. That includes their very first coaster, Great Pumpkin Coaster at Kings Island. That's listed at 8 feet tall. That's a wrap on part 2 of this series. If you didn't see part 1, click the card above, or the card in my end screen, or the links down below. Let me know if anything looks off here, or if you have any thoughts on the rides. Some coasters don't have their official stats listed, so if you know of something I got wrong, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and love coaster content, please give me a sub. I have a playlist with other manufacturer videos. Also, check out my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you also happen to love baseball like me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.